Hello and welcome back to the channel. Been looking forward to this model for so long and I've finally got it completed. Since I started painting 40k last February, I've always wanted to paint up a Dreadnought, but I've been biding my time, improving my painting skills, because I really wanted to do this one justice. Dreadnought is probably one of the most grim weapons in the Imperium's arsenal. A mortally wounded Space Marine encapsulated into what is essentially a life support machine on legs, and armed with a potent arsenal of weapons. The Space Marine often has his remaining limbs removed and never leaves a dark ambionic fluid-filled sarcophagus again. The Ballistus Dreadnought is a real heavy weapons beast equipped with a huge pair of las cannons, a missile launcher and a set of storm bolters. This is the push-fit version of the model from the Leviathan box, and I don't think it breaks down into as many pieces for sub-assembly as a standard kit, but priming was still easy enough. I built the main chassis and then left off the weapon armour plates, the frontal plating to spray those in mephiston red, whilst also doing the chassis and the las cannons in lead belcher. I covered the lead belcher in basilicanum grey contrast paint, and when it dried I really thought I'd messed up. It looked a mess, patchy, streaky, so I touched it up where it was bad, and then cracked on with the next bit was to dry brush on the Necron compound. That brought the metallic edges back to give it a worn metallic machine look. I really thought that I was not going to work, but thankfully the dry brushing did its job and the chassis looked much better. After that, it was pretty much endless palettes of mephiston red applied thinly to try and avoid an uneven finish on those big flat surfaces, as I don't have an airbrush, and I think I just about managed that. Although a lot of this model is big flat surfaces, there's some detail to be done. Spent a bit of time on the black recesses of the missile bays, and then carefully going around with the yellow for the tips and highlight, and also the cabling and tubing and the trim around the sarcophagus. Gave a nice break away from painting the big large panels. I needed a name for him to put on the scroll across the frontal plating, as I thought Bob Ballistus wasn't Warhammer 40k enough, and Stompy McStompface wouldn't fit either. I searched various lore sites for Blood Angels Dreadnought names, but most of them were the Brutalis type Dreadnoughts, and then I stumbled across the name Lenator. I think I pronounced that correctly anyway. He was an ancient serving in the first company, so I chose him as I couldn't find any information on what pattern of Dreadnought he actually was. I've not been very creative with basing lately, and that's partly because the bases from the Blood Angels and Tyranids is more of an urban finish. And I want to have a go at making the base a bit more interesting with this one, even though there was already a big rocky plinth he was stood on that was built into the moulding for the model. When I started this model, my idea was to have some sort of World War II cross-style tank traps. I cut some out of some spare sprue and glued them together, but it was just too big, and having a pair on the base would have made it look too crowded. So I cut out some more sprue and made a couple of fence posts and used some cut up pieces of cork to make some small rocks to look as if some soldiers had put the posts in, and then used the rocks to reinforce their struggle to penetrate the urban terrain. I used some army painted barbed wire between the posts and coiled it around the marker pen to shape it, and then used a bit of basilicanum grey randomly across it to age it a little. Early into the process I thought I'd ruin the model applying the basilicanum grey to the lead belcher, but the Necron compound really brought it back. If I did this model again, I'd probably mask off the feet and the knee plates. The combination of lead belcher and basilicanum grey meant those areas needed several coats, although it could have been I was using very thin coats to try and keep the surfaces smooth. I did toy with the idea of using the burnt heat shield layering from my Infernus Marine Pyroblasters on the exhaust, but thought maybe a bit too much. I'm really happy how this turned out though. I may paint the base edge and the upper surfaces in Citadel Storm Shield, as I'm thinking of giving the gaming side of 40k a go. Going back to regular size model next, but until then, thanks for watching.